Let's try to extract and unravel some of the deeper ingredients in this massive, complicated soup so that we can actually extract and scrape the data that we want from a website. In this section, I would like us to go to the Surrey Schools homepage. Let's go to the Surrey Schools homepage and leave our sidebar over. Remember, this is F12 to close and open this. And what we're going to focus on in this lesson is getting access to the most recent news updates. So you'll see the timestamps. As time goes on, the district posts new news updates depending on big events or newsworthy stories that are here. And maybe we want to create a program that's able to just scrape that up-to-date information for us. So maybe on March 9th, there'll be a new post that we want to have our program just kind of pull in on its own autonomously. So we need to be able to kind of locate this information inside of this big mess of information, because you'll see if I look kind of at this main kind of page of information here, there's so much going on inside of all this stuff everywhere. How do I find content? How do I get my program to know what it is I want? There's way too much going on. And so we're going to use Beautiful Soup to access underlying information and subsections. The first thing I'm going to do is use a piece of functionality that we have in Google Chrome that allows us to find things a lot more easily. I might just zoom in a little bit here in both sides so we can see the text a little bit more clearly in your video. But what I'm going to do is right-click on this news heading and click on Inspect. And it's going to take us directly to the part of our Elements HTML code that is referenced by this item in the website. So this news span is a heading of a section, and this is where this shows up in the HTML right here. So I now kind of get a sense, if I zoom out, of its context under all these menus. It would have been very hard to find directly. And I want to ignore all this other stuff that's irrelevant to the information I'm looking for, if possible. So with this here, I now see that I'm in the news section, but I really want the information down below it. So one thing that I can do is actually just kind of move my mouse around up and down until I get a sense I'm in the right section. So here I see we have this div, this division of our HTML that looks like it's containing the information that we're looking for. So I might just select this for now and kind of keep on going down below. And I see that down below it, I move on to other things. So I'm right here in the ballpark of where I want to be. I'm going to open this up and just kind of start to look a little bit deeper and to try to find the most deepest embedded section that contains the content I want. So I see here that this UL class contains everything, and inside of it, I see these three different subsections, these list entries, which are just kind of like columns and rows that separate it out into the three different news messages. Perfect. This is the type of thing I want to see, where I have the whole container of the information I'm looking for, as well as some subsections. I could go directly to one of these subsections if I was clever enough in my program, but because I want all the news stories, I want to first gather the main meta section and then later zoom into the underlying more specific sections so that I can access everything in the easiest way possible. One thing that I'm going to do right away is note that I have a class here called HCF Rollup, HCF News Rollup. The name is pretty irrelevant other than the fact that if I double click on it, I can copy it, or just right click and go copy. Because I want this information in my beautiful soup to get down to this level. And I need to remember this is a class. In our kind of intro video, we talked about there being different types of data. We have dividers, we have IDs, we have like different tags or different types that we can focus on. But we also have classes, which can be really useful because each class will have a unique ID, at least in most cases, for the content we're looking at. And so this is going to direct me right to this subsection of my HTML code. So with that copied, I can head back over to Beautiful Soup, get rid of this print statement, and now I am going to be able to actually gather that specific subset of information by referencing my soup and finding some information in it. Now, what I can do in this kind of internal section is actually create some parameters of different search conditions to try to find different subcomponents. I can look for different tags by just putting them in a string, like a li for a list or a p for a paragraph, but I can also put in a class like this, class underscore equals. And then as a string, I can put the text in for the the ID of this class that I will be looking for in my file. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, this nicely organized HTML data that I found, this beautiful soup that I have examined, inside of it, I want to specifically find the subsection that has a class ID of this that I've pulled from the website. And what I might do is just assign it to some variable. Here I'm going to call it data. And then I just want to see what happens if I print out this data. Let's just see what happens here. And in this case, I have print data equals none. Something wasn't found. The answer to why I found nothing here is interesting and simple and worth us making sure we understand clearly. I never changed my URL. I'm still examining the contents from my cat page on Wikipedia, which means I'm looking for this class tag on Wikipedia, and apparently it was not to be found. And so I need to make sure that I am actually using the URL of the website that this particular information is relevant to. So we're going to have a lot of custom code in this section with specific identifiers being attached to specific websites. So every single website that you add to this needs to have its own custom logic applied to it because its layout is going to be customized as well. And our programs won't know how to process this on their own. So now with the right reference put in place here, let's run this again and see what our program's able to pull out. And it's a much smaller set of information. Take a look. It has this class that we've kind of found here, this roll-up information with a list with this news event, International Women's Day. And then further on, it also includes a second event, 8 Surrey students receive Horatio Alger Scholarship, and then more HTML information with the text, stay safe by limiting travel. So we've actually managed to, in one step, go down from thousands of lines of HTML code to narrow in right on a small subset of information that we want to be able to access and work with more directly. Now, I also have another piece of functionality that I can work with right away called getText, which is going to process this HTML data and remove all the fancy HTML tags and stuff like that, and just turn it down into the basic content of that section of the web page. Take a look at this. The 3 entries. International Women's Day with its date, 8 Surrey students receive this and its date, and stay safe by limiting travel and its date. All 3 entries in one spot. Does this mean we're finished? Oh, not at all, because there's a problem. This information is all considered one big amalgamated string of information, and there's no way of us very easily telling our program how to make sense of when an entry ends and the next one begins. Now, you could create some interesting logic to like look for a date and then split it around the date with some kind of custom delimiter or something, but that could require a lot of tricky manipulation and lots of string processing. So what we want to do, instead of just converting it to text right away, we want to subdivide it further into its subsections before converting it to text so that we're confident we've organized it separately. Because we already have an organizational section. We have these lists that keep these things separated in the first place. We can take advantage of that fact to split this up even further. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find some subdata. And I'm going to try to access the information that's subdata of this. And now I'm going to make an error here intentionally and see if we can catch it in advance. But let's take a look here. My subdata, I'm going to look into my soup. And what I want to try to find is not just one thing this time, because I have 3 different lists, 3 different ones. And so I'm going to find all. And what am I going to find all of? Well, under here, I just want to see what's under each of these tags, these li tags. So I can simply just put li in as a string to find all the information in these li tags. And now just to see what we're going to get from this, let's print out this subdata and find out what I did wrong. A big mass wall of information. Everything is an li tag, and there's a whole bunch of it all across the screen of different types of things. But what is going on? Why do I have so much information when there only seems to be 3 things? Well, the answer here is I've run the query on the whole soup and not the subsection that I derived previously. So I'm actually finding every single li tag in the entire document. What I need to do instead is continue to zoom in step by step. I want to find all the LIs just in the subsection of data that I kind of narrowed into. And now I'm narrowing in even more and pulling out a list of all of these LI entries. Now if I run this, it should look a lot cleaner because I'm simply just, once it actually kind of picks up and is able to find that information, here we go. It's able to snag, notice it's a list. Let me zoom in here a little bit. It's a list. The first entry is all the way up to, let's see, it's not scrolling over here, the comma that we find right here. Notice the first entry, that first section is now split in a list. So what I can do now is instead of just printing the sub data here, I'm going to say for numin range, the length of my sub data, I'm going to print my sub data, the information at that slot. And I see that there are 3 separate entries that I've now broken this down to. And to really show the usefulness of the second step of kind of like finding a list, finding all, which returns a list of the information, is that if I now go get text on each of these entries, I now see just the text of these 3 entries being displayed. We're almost there to be able to pull this information out. One more step to go here is, what if I don't want these dates, which are kind of oddly put in there? Maybe they're not really that relevant. Maybe if you want to keep them, we're kind of already there. We already have a list of the string information we're looking for. Wonderful, and we've got it to work with in the future if we want. However, what can I do to get down to one more layer deep? Well, let's take a look inside of one of these lists, and I see that inside of this, I have this news event kind of reference of information here, that inside of it has this text for International Women's Day, and then I have a separate subsection for the date that's kind of getting joined together automatically here. What if I only pulled out this chunk, which has an A tag in front of it? I can do something as a separate line, or I can do this all on one line like this at this point. Within each entry that I'm accessing, before I get the text, I want to first only find the information that's split up by the A tag. Let's see what this looks like. Now I have the HTML information without the date at the end. And if I simply just go get text on this query, I now just have these news headlines individually being pulled out. And I'm there, I've got it. I've been able to take an entire website, complex information, tons of things to process through, but by using some of the tools like my inspector, and by understanding the basics of classes and tags, using a piece of functionality like Beautiful Soup, I've been able to zoom in on just this subclass section. Inside of it, pull a list out of all these LI elements, and then be able to zoom in on just the text content I want of each sub-element and have access to that. And I've been able to scrape the exact information that I want very directly with only a few lines of code here. So give this a try yourself. I would recommend that you try a few different scenarios of your own just to practice, making sure that you understand how to use some different types of tags. It's going to take some trial and error at times to really zoom in on the information you're looking for, some experimentation with what sections you want, but do lots and lots of printouts each step of the way to see how well you're doing at narrowing in on the data that you're actually looking for. Remembering that find just returns a single big block of information, and that find all returns a list of information that if you want to access in internals about, if you have to iterate over the whole list itself. All right, I'll see you in the next video for a bit more information about processing strings.